just because I haunt the same old places.
There is a specific kind of country song that does not try to explain the pain. It does not dress it up. It does not look for a silver lining. It just sits down next to you in the dark and says, I know, like they made it in the 1960s. Before Nashville smoothed everything out, before the production got bigger and the feelings got smaller. When a voice and a lyric and a steel guitar were all you needed to make someone feel like the top of their chest had been quietly performing heartbreak. They were reporting it. From places inside themselves that most people spend their whole lives trying not to visit. This is Backroad Trail, and tonight we are going straight into the heart of it. 10 classic Hurtin country songs from the 1960s, the real stories behind every one of them.
I've even learned to like the taste of whiskey.
If you love country music the way it was meant to sound, hit that subscribe button right now. Because number one on this list is the song that every broken heart in America needed and did not know it yet. Number 10, Bill Anderson Still, 1963.
Though you broke my heart.
Commerce, Georgia. James William Anderson III, Whisperin' Bill, they called him, because his voice never pushed, never strained, never demanded anything from you. It simply arrived quietly and stayed. He was a newspaper reporter before he was a country singer, and he brought a journalist's precision to every lyric he ever wrote.
All this time, you're still on my mind.
Still was the song that proved a whisper could be louder than a shout. Still was released in 1963 and spent 7 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Country Chart, the longest run at the top of any country single that entire year.
I love you still.
It crossed over to the pop chart, reaching number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. It won the CMA Song of the Year award in 1963. The song is about a man who has lost the woman he loves and cannot stop loving her despite every rational reason to do so. He knows it makes no sense. He loves her anyway.
In fact, I've lost just about everything since you went away. Everything that is.
That is the most human kind of heartbreak there is. What made Bill Anderson's delivery so devastating was the complete absence of self-pity in his voice. He was not asking for sympathy. He was stating a fact, quietly, clearly, without drama. I love you still. The understatement was the weapon. Every listener who had ever loved someone they should have stopped loving heard themselves in every syllable.
You know, this old flame in my heart is like an eternal fire.
Bill Anderson went on to have over 100 charting country singles across a career spanning 6 decades. He was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2001. He has said in interviews that Still was the song that made him understand what country music was truly capable of.
My friends all think I'm crazy. Maybe I am.
Not volume, not spectacle, but precision. The next artist on this list took a different kind of pain to number 1. The specific ache of a love that ended too soon and left everything behind it feeling like an echo. Number 9, Buck Owens, Together Again, 1964.
Together again.
Sherman, Texas. Alvis Edgar Owens Jr., Buck, moved to Bakersfield, California as a teenager and spent the late 50s building a sound that deliberately rejected everything Nashville was polishing.
The key to my heart.
Raw electric guitar, driving rhythm, a voice that cut through the noise of a barroom without ever raising itself above a conversation. Together Again was the song that took all of that and wrapped it around one of the oldest hurts in the world.
And nothing else matters now.
Together Again was released in 1964 and spent 8 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Country Chart, a record at the time for a Bakersfield artist. The song describes the moment a man and a woman who have been separated by heartbreak finally find their way back to each other.
You're back in my own.
It sounds like joy, but it is written by someone who understands that the joy of reunion only exists because the pain of separation was real. You cannot have one without the other. Together Again became one of the most covered songs in country music history. Ray Charles recorded it. Emmylou Harris made it the title track of her 1976 album, one of the defining records of the Americana movement.
Now where you belong.
The Beatles cited Buck Owens as an influence. George Harrison wore a Buck Owens guitar on the cover of a solo album. And yet Buck Owens spent decades being considered a regional artist by a Nashville establishment that never quite forgave him for building his empire outside of their city.
Is living again.
Buck Owens was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1996. He continued performing at his Crystal Palace venue in Bakersfield until the day he died on March 25, 2006. Together Again is still one of the purest expressions of romantic longing in country music history.
We're together again.
The pain that produced the joy hovering just beneath every note. The next man on this list did not write about longing. He wrote about something much darker. What happens when love turns into something that cannot be taken back? Number 8, Porter Wagoner, The Cold Hard Facts of Life, 1967.
I was back in town the day before I'd planned to.
West Plains, Missouri. Porter Wagoner grew up so poor that he worked at a grocery store and sang on a local radio station just to keep the family from going under. By the 1960s, he was one of the biggest names in country music. A television star, a Grand Ole Opry institution, a man whose rhinestone suits could blind you from 50 feet.
I smiled and said I'll sure surprise my wife.
And then he recorded a song so dark that it still makes people uncomfortable today. The Cold Hard Facts of Life was released in 1967 and reached number 2 on the Billboard Country chart. The song tells the story of a man who comes home early from a trip, stops at a liquor store, and arrives at his house to find his wife in the arms of another man. It does not end well.
I passed the little wine store on the corner.
The narrator tells the story in a flat, almost clinical tone, as if he is recounting facts, not emotions, which makes the violence at the center of the story land with the weight of something inevitable. Country radio played it without hesitation in 1967. The genre had always understood that real life contained things that polite music refused to acknowledge.
From there to my house, his car stayed inside.
The Cold Hard Facts of Life was written by Bill Anderson, the same man who whispered Still into the top of the chart 4 years earlier, which makes the contrast between those two songs one of the most remarkable demonstrations of range in country music songwriting history. Tenderness and darkness from the same pen.
And I drank a fifth of courage and walked in.
Porter Wagoner went on to discover and launch Dolly Parton's career, signing her as his duet partner in 1967, the same year this record came out. Their professional partnership produced some of the finest country duets of the era and ended in a legal battle that Parton eventually settled.
They screamed and cried, please put away that knife.
She wrote, I Will Always Love You about leaving him. Porter Wagoner was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2002. He died on October 28, 2007. The next voice on this list turned pure longing into one of the most commercially successful records of the entire decade. Number 7, Conway Twitty, It's Only Make Believe, 1958. Helena, Arkansas. Harold Lloyd Jenkins, Conway Twitty, was working a rock and roll circuit in the late 50s when he wrote It's Only Make Believe on a napkin during a break between sets at the Flamingo Lounge in Hamilton, Ontario.
My hopes and my dreams come true.
He and his drummer Jack Nance finished the song in about 30 minutes. Conway later said he wrote it about a woman who flirted with him at the club every night but was clearly in love with someone else. He took that specific ordinary pain and turned it into something that stopped the world. It's Only Make Believe was released in 1958 on MGM Records and reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 as well as the country chart.
My heart I can't control. You rule my very soul.
It sold over 8 million copies worldwide, one of the best-selling singles of the entire decade. It reached number 1 in the United Kingdom and charted in over 20 countries. The song is about a man who pretends in public that the woman he loves actually returns his feelings, knowing full well that she does not. The make-believe is all he has, and he holds on to it with everything. What separated Conway Twitty from every other artist attempting this kind of romantic devastation was the physical scale of his voice. It did not ask for your sympathy. It commanded your attention, and then used that attention to place the hurt somewhere you could not reach to remove it.
My one and only friend is that.
Elvis Presley heard the record and reportedly said it was one of the greatest vocal performances he had ever heard. That is the highest room there is, and Conway Twitty was in it. Conway Twitty eventually crossed fully into country music in the late 60s and became the most commercially successful country artist of the 1970s, 40 number 1 country singles across his career.
My prayers, my hopes, and my schemes. You are my every dream, but it's
Its only make-believe remained the defining document of what his voice was capable of when it had something genuinely enormous to carry. The next artist on this list built a career on songs that sounded like the morning after, the specific gray light of a life that has been altered by something that cannot be undone. Number 6, Ray Price, Heartaches by the Number, 1959.
Heartache number one was when you left me.
Perryville, Texas. Noble Ray Price was one of the closest friends Hank Williams had in the final years of Williams's life. The two men shared an apartment in Nashville, and Price absorbed everything he could from the man many considered the greatest country singer who ever lived.
And heartache number two was when you come back.
After Williams died in 1953, Price carried that inheritance forward with a voice and a sense of phrasing that were entirely and unmistakably his own. Heartaches by the Number was the song that defined what that meant. Heartaches by the Number was written by Harlan Howard and recorded by Ray Price in 1959.
Oh, I've got heartaches by the number. Troubles.
It reached number 1 on the Billboard Country chart and crossed over to the Pop Top 10. Guy Mitchell had a pop version that also charted simultaneously. The song catalogs with almost mathematical precision the accumulating weight of romantic disappointment. Each heartache numbered, each trouble scored, each small humiliation added to the running total of a man who keeps showing up anyway.
Heartache number 3 was when you called me.
Harlan Howard, who wrote the song, was one of the most gifted country songwriters of the entire decade. He also wrote I Fall to Pieces for Patsy Cline and Busted for Ray Charles. But Heartaches by the Number is the song that demonstrated his particular genius for finding the universal inside the specific, making a listener feel that their own accumulated small heartbreaks had finally been given a name and a number and acknowledged by someone who understood.
I waited, but you must have lost your way.
Ray Price was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1996. He continued recording until the final year of his life and died on December 16, 2013 at the age of 87. His final album, 3 Sheets to the Wind, was released in 2013, the same year he died, and contained some of the most moving vocal performances of his entire career. He sang until there was no more singing left.
But the day that I stopped counting, that's the day my world will end.
Before we get to number 5, and I have to warn you, this next song is one of the most devastating things country music ever put on tape. If this channel is speaking to you tonight, if these songs are hitting somewhere deep, then Backroad Trail is exactly where you belong. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell. We do this every single week and it is always free. All right, take a breath, because number 5 is about to remind you exactly why they called it Hurtin' music.
Thank you.
Number 5, Merle, Haggard, Sing Me Back Home, 1967.
The warden led a prisoner down the hallway.
San Quentin State Prison, California, 1957. Merle Haggard was 20 years old and serving time for attempted burglary when a fellow inmate named Rabbit walked to the gas chamber.
And I heard him tell the warden.
The prison chaplain had granted Rabbit a final request to hear a country song played by the inmate band as he made his last walk down the corridor. Haggard was in that band. He watched it happen. And 10 years later, he wrote it down. Sing Me Back Home was released in 1967 and reached number 1 on the Billboard Country chart.
Let him sing me back home.
It is one of the most quietly devastating songs in country music history. A condemned man's final request to hear music from the life he is leaving, told from the perspective of the musician who played it for him. The narrator is not the man walking to his death. He is the man left standing, holding the guitar, watching the door close.
And turn back the years.
That specific position, the witness, not the victim, is what makes the song so unbearable. Haggard has said in multiple interviews that Sing Me Back Home is the most personal song he ever recorded. More personal than Mama Tried, more personal than Okie from Muskogee. Because it was not a story he invented, he was there. He watched a man he knew walk away from everything to the sound of a country song.
Bring me back home before I die.
Writing it was his way of making sure that walk was not forgotten. Johnny Cash, who had his own profound connection to prison audiences, cited Sing Me Back Home as one of the songs he wished he had written himself. That is one of the highest compliments one country artist can pay another.
Take me away and turn.
Haggard was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1994. The song he wrote in memory of a man named Rabbit is still one of the most honest things country music has ever produced. The next artist on this list started her career with a song that arrived like a slap, the sound of a woman deciding she had been good long enough. Number 4, Tammy Wynette, Your Good Girl's Gonna Go Bad, 1967.
I've never seen the inside of a barroom.
Red Bay, Alabama. Virginia Wynette Pugh, Tammy, had been married and left and was raising children alone before she was old enough to order a drink. She drove to Nashville in a car that barely ran, knocked on record label doors until her knuckles were sore, and was told no by 3 different labels before Billy Sherrill at Epic Records finally listened.
I see these are the things that bring you pleasure. So I'm gonna...
Your Good Girl's Gonna Go Bad was her debut single. It was not a plea, it was a warning. Your Good Girl's Gonna Go Bad was released in 1967 and reached number 3 on the Billboard Country chart. It announced Tammy Wynette to country radio not as a victim of romantic circumstance, but as a woman with a breaking point. Someone who had been patient and faithful and devoted, and who had finally quietly decided that she was done.
'Cause your good girls are gonna go bad.
She was not crying, she was informing. And country radio, which had never quite heard a woman deliver that particular message in that particular tone, could not stop playing it. Producer Billy Sherrill understood immediately what made Tammy Wynette different from every female country singer he had worked with. She did not sing around the emotion. She sang directly into it, with a clarity and a specificity that felt less like performance and more like testimony.
I wanna be the swingin'est swinger you've ever had.
The women who bought Your Good Girl's Gonna Go Bad were not buying a record. They were buying a moment of recognition. Tammy Wynette went on to collect 17 #1 country singles and became one of the defining female voices of country music history.
Powdered up, then you ought to be glad. 'Cause your good girls are gonna go bad.
She was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1998. She died on April 6, 1998, just months after her induction. Your Good Girl's Gonna Go Bad remains the song that showed who she was before anyone fully understood it. The next man on this list did not warn anybody about anything. He simply stated with total honesty that he still cared, and the admission alone was enough to break the entire room. Number 3, George Jones, She Thinks I Still Care, 1962.
Just because I ask a friend about
Saratoga, Texas. George Glenn Jones started singing in beer joints at 14 for tips thrown on the stage. He had a voice that seemed to contain more human experience than any one person should be able to carry.
she thinks I still care.
A voice that bent notes the way grief bends time, that could communicate the specific weight of a specific loss with a precision that no other instrument has ever matched. Frank Sinatra called him the second greatest singer in America.
Just because I'm not the happy guy I used to.
Merle Haggard said he was the best country singer who ever lived. And She Thinks I Still Care is the song that proves both of them right. She Thinks I Still Care was released in 1962 and spent 6 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Country chart.
Oh, that little bitty titty bitty thing they call the love.
It was written by Dickie Lee, a young songwriter who handed it to Jones almost casually. Jones recorded it in a single session. The song is built around a man denying that he still loves a woman while every single piece of evidence in the lyric proves that he does. He denies it, but the song says otherwise.
Nobody's ever seen it, but it's got the whole world shook up. It all started.
Every line is a confession disguised as a defense. What George Jones did with that lyric was something that cannot be taught and cannot be imitated. He found the exact place where a man's pride and a man's grief meet and refuse to resolve.
It all started with a little bitty kiss and a hug.
And he lived inside that place for the duration of the song with such complete conviction that the listener has no choice but to believe every word while simultaneously understanding that every word is a lie the narrator is telling himself.
Well, the race is on, and here comes pride at the backstretch. Heartaches are going to the
George Jones was
end.
inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1992. He continued recording and performing until the final years of his life, battling alcoholism, health complications, and a public personal life that produced as much drama as his music. He died on April 26, 2013, at the age of 81.
Tears welling up cold and deep inside like my heart's from a big break. And this town.
She Thinks I Still Care was covered by Elvis Presley, Anne Murray, and dozens of others, none of whom came close to what Jones did with it in 1962. The next voice on this list made the whole world feel her loss, and then left before anyone was ready. Number 2, Patsy Cline, She's Got You, 1962. Hensley, Patsy Cline, taught herself to perform by watching television and singing along to the radio in a house where her father had walked out and the family scraped for everything. She had a voice that arrived fully formed, as if it had always known exactly what it was for. By 1962, she was the biggest female country star in America. And She's Got You was the song that showed exactly why that was not even slightly a surprise. She's Got You was written by Hank Cochran and released in January 1962. Number 1 on the Billboard Country Chart and crossed over to the Pop Top 15. The premise is devastatingly simple. A woman who has been left by a man still has all the objects, all the memories, all the evidence of the relationship. His picture, his records, his class rank. Between her situation and the woman he left for can be stated in 4 words: she's got you. Patsy Cline recorded She's Got You just months after surviving a near-fatal car accident in June 1961 that left her with a broken wrist, a broken hip, a dislocated collarbone, and facial lacerations. She recorded the song wearing a cast. She sang with the composure of someone who had looked at something much worse than heartbreak and come back through it anyway. That composure is in every note. Patsy Cline died on March 5, 1963, when the private plane carrying her home from a benefit concert crashed in Camden, Tennessee. She was 30 years old. She had been recording for barely a decade. Country Music Hall of Fame in 1973 and remains, over 60 years after her death, one of the most streamed and most beloved country artists in history. She's Got You has never stopped being discovered by someone who needed it. The final song on this list was written in the 60s and recorded in 1970, but it carries the full weight of everything that decade knew about heartbreak, and it delivers every ounce of it. Number 1, Don Gibson, Oh Lonesome Me, 1958.
Everybody's going out and having fun.
Shelby, North Carolina. Don Gibson was working in a textile mill and playing small clubs at night when he sat down at a piano one afternoon in 1957 and wrote 2 songs in a single sitting.
Can't get over how she set me free.
The first was I Can't Stop Loving You. The second was Oh Lonesome Me. He wrote both of them in less than an hour. Together, those 2 songs, written in one afternoon in a mill town in North Carolina, became 2 of the most recorded country songs in history.
Oh, lonesome me.
And most people have never heard Don Gibson's name. Oh Lonesome Me was released in January 1958 on RCA Victor and became the first country single to reach number 1 on both sides of the record simultaneously. Oh Lonesome Me on one side, I Can't Stop Loving You on the other. It spent 8 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Country Chart. It crossed over to the Pop Top 20. It was the best-selling country single of the entire year.
Well, there must be some way I can lose these lonesome blues.
A song about sitting alone in an empty house wondering why everybody else seems to be doing just fine while you are falling apart. Country music had never heard it said quite that plainly before. The genius of Oh Lonesome Me is its complete absence of self-dramatization. The narrator does not rage, he does not blame, he does not make the loss bigger than it is. He simply sits with the loneliness, observing it, naming it, acknowledging that everyone else seems to have moved on just fine while he is still exactly where he was. That specific, ordinary, undramatic loneliness is the hardest kind to sing about, honestly. Don Gibson sang it like breathing.
But she's not like me. She's out and fancy free, flirting with.
I Can't Stop Loving You, the song on the other side of that same record, was later recorded by Ray Charles in 1962 and spent 5 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming one of the defining recordings of the entire decade. Don Gibson wrote both songs in one afternoon at a piano in North Carolina. He was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2001. He died on November 17, 2003.
Forget about the past and find somebody new. I thought.
Oh Lonesome Me sits at number 1 on this list because it is the sound of Hurtin country music at its most honest, most unguarded, and most purely itself. 2 words that say everything that 10 pages could not.
Oh, lonesome me.
10 songs, 10 voices. 10 moments where country music did the one thing it has always done better than anything else. It told the truth about pain without flinching.
Though you broke my heart,
Without dressing it up, without asking permission. The 1960s gave us some of the most honest music this country has ever produced.
My hopes and my dreams come true. My one and only you.
If these songs found you somewhere tender tonight, that is what they were made for. That is exactly what they were made for. This is Backroad Trail. Hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell.
And heartache number 2 was when you come back.
Because the stories we have left to tell are just as real as every song you heard tonight. We will see you down the road.